most people here tonight are aware. In a way, you're a neighbor of mine. Elizabeth May lives 2 houses down from my mother and father. So we're neighbors in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And as leader of the Green Party of Canada, I'm sure you'll feel another connection to the University of Regina. The university, as you've seen, is located in the midst of a wonderful, beautiful urban park. A setting that's a perfect backdrop for much of the work that takes place here.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to Lynn, thanks to Vianne, and it's true, her parents, Jack and Georgie, are absolutely across the street from where I woke up, and I'm not going to tell you what hour of the day it was in relation to Saskatchewan time, because I might just fall over myself in a dead faint thinking about it. But my day started in New Glasgow, and I'm happy to be from one end of the country to, well, not quite at the other end, but to coming to the prairies and coming to Saskatchewan and finding myself basically at home. And that's one of the lovely things about Canada, is that you're never very far from people who know people that you've known for a very long time. How do you describe a feminist? Someone who believes in human rights. Someone who believes that women have equal rights. I never thought that would become so controversial as it has been in recent years, as people said, oh, well, you know, and to be an eco-feminist, well, you're doubly damned, aren't you? So that's where I'm starting from tonight, to reach this water. Because there'll be a point later where I really need it, and I won't feel like leaving you and running for it. But these are the sources that really, you know, you wonder, why don't people sit up and pay attention when you've got things like the US Department of Defense using a model for Royal Dutch Shell that concluded that a plausible scenario for abrupt climate change was losing the Gulf Stream in 2010. And then they concluded that climate change represented a much greater threat to global security than terrorism, because the geopolitical unrest of millions of viral refugees. Other kinds of abrupt climate effects that people worry about: the collapse of the Western Antarctic ice sheet, not terribly likely. I sure hope it doesn't happen. But if global climate becomes so destabilized, if greenhouse gases keep rising, if they rise above about 425 parts per million, all bets are off that things become unstoppable, because global average temperature could then kick into a scenario where it kept increasing itself as that lever I talked about shifted from constantly restoring and supporting life-giving systems to moving things into reverse through feedback loops. The responsible government would say, well, we must respond to the economic recession, but we must do it in a way that puts us on a path to a low-carbon economy. These are things we must do. And some governments around the world are doing that. By the way, I'm very encouraged by Barack Obama's stimulus package, because it picks up some of the things that Greens have been arguing for. We put forward in our stimulus package, expanding passenger rail. Barack Obama just announced $13 billion expanding passenger rail in the United States, the country that elevated the automobile to a deity. And they are bringing in $13 billion of passenger rail as a response to the recession, $150 billion in renewable energy, and monies to ensure energy efficiency and reduce demand for energy to the equivalent amount of eliminating all the US demand for oil from the Middle East and Venezuela. So other countries are getting this idea. Some other countries aren't taking their responsibilities as seriously as they should. We are the worst actor on the world stage at the moment. Why don't we understand this notion? Why doesn't the government understand this clear and present danger? Now, it's not just the Harper government that doesn't get this. For the last decade or so, the climate crisis is the only issue of public policy where the media, but particularly politicians, deal with the issue as if it was a matter of personal and individual responsibility. You know, we don't think Canadians are ready to really take those steps. We keep asking people to change their light bulbs to compact fluorescence, but we don't seem to think that Canadians are really prepared to take this issue on, and therefore that absolves government of responsibility for acting. Footprint, don't withdraw from the world. You know, we need to expand that political footprint, and here are the ways we need to do it. We need to be engaged not just during elections, and Forgive me for a moment, because it's obvious that I'm leader of a federal political party, and it's the Greens, and I want Greens in Parliament, and I want Greens in the legislature, but forget that for a moment. I want to try to speak as a citizen. I'm enraged about what's happening to democracy. This is not an ad for the books, but this is a heck of a good book if you did want to buy a book. This one is about the crisis of democracy in Canada, and until we fix democracy, it's very hard to know how we're going to respond to the other global challenges. So how do we have an effect? As Lynn mentioned, the book talks a lot about one of the systemic changes we could make to make democracy work better would be proportional representation. There's a chance, if any of you have friends or relatives in British Columbia, please do phone or Google or snail mail them, email them, because the vote in British Columbia May 12th is also a referendum on changing the system of voting in BC, getting away from first past the post and embracing single transferable vote. One of the ways that we could make the vote fairer and make the vote that people cast better reflect the kind of parliament you see in the end. So that's one aspect of it. Basically have folks, about 5 companies, who determine what English Canadians hear and read and see on television or read in newspapers, and they're vertically integrated. So CTV Globe Media, you've got CTV Television controlling Globe and Mail, as well as a whole bunch of radio stations, commercial radio across Canada's very powerful influencers of opinion. Can West controlling just about every one of the very few daily Canadian newspapers are not in the Can West empire. And as these companies are facing bankruptcy, and because they've constantly, it's not that they're bad people who own these companies, the process of media concentration comes with it a profit motive that has meant cutting of journalists and dumbing down the content and losing local reporters, so that city halls are not nearly as well covered as they used to be. People who want to know what's going on in City Hall basically have to go, scanning through all the websites or attending City Hall meetings themselves, or even there's one group I ran into in Hamilton, Ontario, that goes into City Hall meetings and tries to transcribe the discussions, the debates, and they post the agendas on their own citizen website, so people can go to a website to try to find out what's going on in City Council, because you'll no longer find it in the newspaper.
My question is about the politics of fear.
Yeah.
And what I mean very specifically, if you're speaking about the media, it's only a couple of weeks ago that Rex Murphy claimed that if you look around and see what's happening with the recession, this is what environmentalists really want when it comes down to changes that need to be made for the climate change. The other thing that is connected to that is the way that numerous local politicians in Saskatchewan treated the last election. That is to say, if environmental changes are made, Saskatchewan's economy is going to tank. So how do you and how do we as citizens combat this very basic sense of fear?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. Of course, Rex Murphy has been anti-environmental from my first time I was interviewed by Rex Murphy, believe it or not, was 1978, and it wasn't a happy experience. Aspects of why the recession gives us a golden opportunity to shift from a brown economy to a green economy, and that's the way to get out of a recession. Or Don Drummond, senior economist at TD Bank, who's former Deputy Minister of Finance, was saying the best way for Canada to get out of a recession is to reduce their income taxes, reduce payroll taxes, and put a tax on carbon.
The party, Liberal Party get-togethers, and they literally think they're going to save the world. It's like the Liberal Party is the way to go, and it's this catch-all. So I want to see what is your approach to politics, because I think this grassroots approach is super effective. You get people out here, we're listening to this approach. Whereas you can listen to Stephen Harper, Jack Clayton, it's like they're jumping around. They have kind of compartmentalized policies, but it's disenchanting. What's the word? Disenchanting?
Disgusting?
It's disgusting. It's not capturing anybody's attention.
Yeah, no,
the way Canadian politicians go about
Yeah.
the business.
Well, it's become, our approach as Greens is this, look,
Thanks, buddy.
my fundamental starting point is that stop thinking about this as politics and think about it as democracy. Unfortunately, within political parties, and being in one myself, and we're the least, we're the top-down party you're going to find. We're a grassroots party. We're looking at ideas. We're trying to get, I think in terms of our evolution, we're right now about where the CCF was when Tommy Douglas was leading, where it mattered more to get the policies changed than to get credit for getting the policies changed. So that's kind of where I see us in, or what we should aspire to be.